Welcome back, viewers, to another of my embarrassing battle scene breakdowns. This time we go to 1939, at the border incident between the Soviet Union and Imperial Japan at Nomonhan or Khalkin-Gol, which followed an earlier incident with the same outcome of the year before. You see it here at Lake Hassan. The ambitiousness of My Way is staggering. The scope of it. Here they are at D-Day after they've been captured by the Soviets. Bit of a spoiler there. And its scene of the Battle of Nomonhan 1939 has to be seen to be believed. Let's rip into it. A scout comes running back, never a pleasant sight to the Japanese, but why are so many men wearing those rising sun headbands and bombs or mines on their chests? You'll see. Holy buggery, it's an onrushing wave of Soviet BT-5 and BT-7 light tanks. What's that, you say? How can it be an embarrassing battle scene if it's got BT tanks? Let me explain. I like this Japanese artillery. It looks right. Thank you. This movie is absolutely not for the squeamish. You've got to see how violent it gets yet. They've made a commendable effort with these tanks. They're scratch-built, you know, they're not actual. And they're much better than most movie tanks scratch-built for the purpose. Note the sort of Morse code painted in white around the turret top. That's spot on, I'll show you. A very common Red Army marking, as this original photo shows, and this modern painting as well. But alas, it's more for Western Russia than for Siberia. This is Khalkin-Gol in this photo. Tanks carry both armor-piercing, shells for fighting other tanks, and high explosive, and this is a good use of it. They don't encounter Japanese tanks in this scene. So, what's embarrassing about it? Here's a pretty good reason right here. The commanders are hanging out of the protection of the tank. Looks kinda sexy, doesn't it? But oh my god, what a balls up. Everyone on Earth was careful not to do this shit. That's the point of having all that bulletproof armor. And, by the way, it wasn't even possible because the BT-7's hatch opens the other way. Also true of the plentiful BT-5, seen here being dredged up recently from the River Neva in St. Petersburg. What this actually achieves in practical terms is to make some part of the tank vulnerable to machine gun fire or rifle fire or pistol fire after all. And I calculate that at 1/18 of its entire frontage is exposed in this way. This also exposes them to the numerous explosions. This guy here should have been torn apart by shrapnel and shockwaves. I just about guarantee what happened is these guys got on Wikipedia and saw that the machine guns in this thing were Degtyaryov, learned the joyous tidings that these things are still very plentiful today in use in wars, and jumped on board for the own goal. By the way, the Japanese do have an armoured car which looks reasonably Japanese for a mock-up, but it has no way of taking out a tank. So, how will they take out tanks? It's time to find out what all these men are here for. Instead of using the numerous field guns in direct fire like I know I would, they send in suicide sappers and suicide trucks loaded with fuel. totally vulnerable to all that machine gun fire as these men are, they kneel in serried ranks in the open, thus risking useless sacrifice. Only a handful are not magically bulletproof. So what will happen when the trucks get there? The answer is some of the most awesome pyrotechnics ever put into a movie. In the course of which they accidentally reveal some secrets of how they constructed these tanks for the movie. They're hollow. You can see right up into this thing. As for the tracks, they've used a modern sort of track. Sadly, it would appear that the lovely, clanky, agricultural-looking tracks of the original just wouldn't be available anymore. And do you even need them? I mean, the Soviets had this weird obsession with making the thing travel on its wheels. It could do that. And I'll bet that was about as popular as pork pie at a Passover with the crews who had to unscrew the damn things and stack them and then put them all back on. Look, we thought we were getting a battle scene. Now will you fucking show it? Alright, normal hostilities will be resumed now. Now, all this mass, excessive pyrotechnic is gorgeous, but unhistorical. However, incendiary warfare played a major part in the Battle of Khalkin-Gol. Partly because of the widespread Japanese use of molotov cocktails in this campaign, and partly because of the Soviet use of the dreaded T-26 flamethrower tank. And in something far more characteristic of the 1945 fighting than the 1939 fighting, the Japanese launch a mass pack mine suicide attack. By the way, I forgot to mention the Degtier Urov only could fire for 4 seconds before you had to change the magazine. Virtuoso display of why you shouldn't hang your body out of the hatch during combat. And this can't happen if you stay in the tank. Alright, so the Soviets are using flamethrowers, although rather inaccurately they're mounted on top of the tank and you have to get out to hang your body out to use it. So this happens. A reminder that in real life they used the flamethrower T-26 tank, such as you see in these historical photos. If you're squeamish, pause now and go to the timestamp in the description to skip. What does it take to make these crewmen get back in the tank? Now we see it as a special suicide unit. Even with real soldiers using rifles in the middle of them, these tankmen won't get back in the protection of the armor. Repellent as this scene is, this man does have the attitudes of the Imperial Japanese Army down pat. But the colonel prevails in the struggle and sends the disgraced man away with a pack mine to attack the tanks and recover his honor in death. Whoa, so much horror, so much gore, so much unrealistic stuff. Now, let me just point out some things before you go. The BT-5 and BT-7 tanks, I reckon they're dead set gorgeous. Notice the spaced wheels, because they're taken from an American original, the Christie, and they weren't able to do that in this movie. It served in the Spanish Civil War. Both the Republican rebel, to whom Stalin sold them, and the forces of good, who captured some and turned them around. Most of them seem to have had a stowage bin attached to the back of the turret, as some of them in this movie do, although most of the ones in this movie just have a stark cylinder. Well, that existed too, as you see in this museum BT-5, and in the two turrets from BTs that were placed on the legendary T-35 land battleship with its hideously impractical 5 turrets. Thank you for watching my humble one-man project right through to the end. You do me much honor.